Hi everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, and this week's contract tip has to do with a couple of things. One is what a listing agent puts in the MLS remarks and what you as a selling agent need to put in the contract. The second part of today's tip has to do with these seller property disclosure forms. So let's dive in. So if a listing agent, per a seller's instruction, markets and advertises the property with items that the seller is willing to negotiate to leave with the property or to do for the buyer. For example, let's say in the listing service remarks, it says something to the effect of seller will purchase 1-year home warranty to be paid for at closing, or something along those lines. Or seller to leave swing set in backyard, or furniture porch outdoor fire pit, or something along those lines, or gas logs and fireplace. Just because that information is provided to you in the MLS service or on a flyer, that is just marketing and advertising. That is just the seller indicating some items that they are willing to negotiate for readily. You, as a selling agent representing the buyer, those things are not automatically being conveyed between the seller and the buyer unless they are agreed upon and negotiated for in the actual purchase and sale agreement and signed by the parties. So you selling agents, when you're writing up a contract, if a flyer or whatever advertises something, make sure to include it in the contract if that is something that the buyer wants. Now, the other issue is has to do with the seller's property disclosure statement. Now, in the items, this issue, I guess, is very different depending upon which contract form a buyer and a seller go binding on. If the buyer and the seller go binding on a GAR contract and the GAR seller's property disclosure statement exhibit is included, that is GAR form F50, then in that document, there is a whole section called Fixtures Checklist, and it addresses some items, and this has to do with what items the seller is leaving with the property or taking when they move. So this says, it's paragraph D, and it says Fixtures Checklist, directions on how to use. It is often unclear what constitutes a fixture which remains with the property versus personal property which does not remain with the property. To avoid any disputes, the seller shall have the right to remove all items on the checklist below that are left blank. The items on the checklist below that are marked shall remain with the property. All items remaining with the property shall include remotes and or all accessories necessary for use. Unless otherwise indicated, if any item is left blank, the seller may remove all of that item from the property. For example, if refrigerator is left blank, then the seller may remove all refrigerators on the property. Hey. The checklist is intended to supersede the common law of fixtures with regard to the items below. The common law of fixtures shall apply to all items not on the checklist. Seller shall remove all items left blank below prior to closing or the transfer of possession, whichever comes later. Seller shall lose the right to remove those items not timely removed. In removing items, seller shall use all reasonable care to prevent and repair any damage to the area where the item was removed. And then it has a whole list of items. For example, under appliances, it says clothes dryer, clothes washing machine, dishwasher, garbage disposal, refrigerator without freezer, refrigerator with freezer. Then there's a home media section. Cable remotes, internet wiring, satellite dish, interior fixtures, ceiling fan, chandelier, fireplace, gas logs, so forth and so on. And then there is a section below that for clarification of items. So, for example, if a seller has multiple items in a property, multiple refrigerators, there is a section where the seller may specifically itemize which refrigerator is staying and which is going, and so forth and so on. Now that's the GAR form F50 Seller's Property Disclosure Statement Exhibit. Now if the parties go binding on an RE Forms contract and the parties are using the Seller's Property Condition Disclosure Statement from the RE Forms package, that's form RE130, Seller's Property Condition Disclosure Statement. Now in questions 54 through 87, there are a whole number of items that look very similar to that list we just read. For example, security alarm system, carbon monoxide detector, chimney or fireplace, lawn sprinkling system, oven, range, refrigerator, so forth and so on. And the answers to the question say yes, no, unknown, or not applicable. And the question posed to the seller who completes this form says, have there been or are there any known material defects in any of the following? And then that's the list of those items. So in this form, for the RE Forms package, there is no mention or assertion of any items that a seller is leaving with the property or taking at closing or possession. So if you are so what do you do? Well, in the RE Forms actual contract for the purchase and sale, and that is RE 100, Contract for the Purchase and Sale of Residential Real Property. On the first page, on the very first page, you identify the buyer and the seller, and then there's a property description. So you give the address and the legal description of the property, and then in paragraph 1, just after the address and legal description, it says, together with all permits, privileges, rights, members, and appurtenances thereto, and together with all improvements, fixtures, personal property, trees, timber, and other crops and plants located thereon, which shall now be referred to as, quote, the property. So that is what's referenced in the RE Forms. So regardless of which contract form you are binding on, number one, those are only applicable if those actual exhibits are attached and referenced as part of the purchase and sale agreement. If there are specific items that a buyer and a seller are negotiating specifically to stay with the property, then that must be actually spelled out in the purchase and sale agreement. So again, if you're binding on GAR and it is the seller's property disclosure statement, the GAR form has that and it does indicate that the seller is leaving, then that's fine. But if that's not attached, binding on the RE Forms, or there's something not itemized on that disclosure statement, then the buyer and the seller need to negotiate for that somewhere else in the contract. Likewise, if the seller is marketing themselves as being willing to negotiate a home warranty, the swing set in the backyard, the gas fire pit outside, something like that. Again, just because it is in FMLS, Georgia MLS, or Flyer, the seller is not obligated to leave those items or pay for a home warranty unless it is specified and agreed upon within the context of the purchase and sale agreement. So, hope this contract tip helped you out. Thank you again so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education.